Homeschooling is hard. I put actually, I had a reader ask me, why do you think homeschooling comes easier for some and is such a challenge for others? The very first thing is, and I have a whole bunch of moms that kind of chimed in on this one, but I want you to know, homeschool mom, that homeschooling's hard for all of us, whether we're brand new, when it's super overwhelming, because it is at first, or whether we've been homeschooling for a long time. I've been homeschooling 25 years, and I can tell you that some days are super easy. Some years are almost super easy. And then there's those days, years, months, seasons when we just are like, why does it have to be so hard? So why does homeschooling look like it comes easier for others than such a challenge for others? The very first thing is I want you to remember that even though it looks like everybody else's homeschool life is unicorns and rainbows, you're just seeing the top of you're just seeing the highlights that they share on social media or that they want other people to know. The reality is that when you see something that looks like a unicorn on a rainbow hilltop, what you're not seeing is the blanket that's covering the mound of laundry that the little toy unicorn is sitting upon. Life is messy, and homeschool is like spaghetti. It's all mixed together. So we're not just teaching math and reading and writing, but we're also teaching manners and how to cook and make sure that you take the dog out and that you feed the dog and don't wake the baby. And do I have to remind you to change the toilet paper roll? Right, homeschooling is just everything all together. So I love these. So much wisdom in the different homeschool moms that chimed in for this reader. So why do you think homeschooling comes easier for some and is such a challenge for others? I love the first one that's like, wow, there's not enough space for me to say everything that I want to say. Some people, one mom says, I think mostly because people are also different. Learning styles, personality, teaching methods, subject matter all come into play. Some people are natural teachers. They were born to like delight and educate and expand their child's horizon and get them to think. They just have that kind of teacher mentality, coach, mentor. I've known some amazing educators, not just teachers, but educators. And wow, they just have this ability to ask open-ended questions and inspire learning. Some of us, it's a little bit trickier and we have to try a little bit harder, but that's okay. Okay, I love this one. Someone just answered this for me yesterday. This person said, some of us have been blessed with amazing mentors early on. I have to agree, or at least it's a huge part of it. After talking to this person, so this mom said, I remembered a verse back when I was a new mom and remembered promising my younger self that my older self would live out the verse later in life. Teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live and not slanderers, addicted to wine, but to teach what is good. I'm going to stop right there. In that whole idea of older moms teaching younger moms, for the longest time, I would always look for moms, homeschool moms specifically, that were further down the road than I was. And then I would look for the ones that were rocking it, and then I would pattern my life after them. Well, somewhere along the journey, I became the gray-haired older mom that's been homeschooling 25 years. And so I kind of feel like it's my calling and my joy to be able to share the things that have worked in our homeschool journey. And don't mistake that as meaning that it's always been easy and fun, because it hasn't. There's been years that it's been super hard, years I couldn't walk, or years that one of our kids had major surgery, or just behavior issues that we had to just really focus on. So homeschooling's tricky. I like this. Besides all the things about personality types, not everyone has the same expectations of what homeschooling is supposed to be or what has to be. And I think a lot of people make it harder on themselves than it has to be by holding culturally defined assumptions about education that simply aren't true. So true that when a lot of us step into homeschooling, that we have a preconceived conception or idea of what it's supposed to look like, and we forget to factor in our family and our children and their passions and abilities and our skills. It's important that we pay attention to the crew, the set of monkeys that we got around our feet. I love this. I was about as educated and experienced as a person could be before having children. Every job I've had since my teenage years was working with kids. I have a bachelor's of science in child development, a credential in Montessori education, and she says multiple subject credentials for public school and several years as a classroom teacher. Did I still have homeschool days when I struggled? You betcha. I still cannot teach algebra. Did I rely on my homeschool support group? Always. It takes a village. If you do struggle, you could always be putting too much pressure on yourself. Use the resources available to you. I could go on and on about ways to break down concepts and make them teachable, or the ages and stages of development, da 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 da. But most of us already have the knowledge that we need. We may just need some support. And I love that, because the reality is that we step into homeschooling with a whole toolkit of things that we know and things that we understand, and we're all ready to teach. But you're going to bump into things that you don't know. Now, what I did in my homeschool journey is I collected experts, specifically mathematicians, because although I am proficient all the way up through algebra, there comes a point in math where it's easier to just do it for me than to teach it. So I collected mathematicians and I kept them in my back pocket, kind of like there's an old Dr. Seuss book and it's called, I think it's called A Walk It in My Pocket. And so I kept experts in my back pocket that could help me teach things like percentages or the quadratic formula and all that stuff. So you don't have to know everything in order to homeschool. You just need a support network around you. Some of it will be online, where you'll find resources like this that'll just let you know that you're doing great, even though your kids fill in the blank, can't read, can't write, can't figure out fractions or whatever the things is. Remember, all 5 of my boys were delayed readers. Delayed. My youngest didn't read till he was 10. We survived, and they're amazing, and they've done really well. So again, we're talking about, why do you think homeschooling comes easier for some and is such a challenge for others? And these are just, I love the wisdom in the homeschool community. One of these gals says, I started homeschooling in the early 1990s. I think some things are hard and some things are easy. It's always waxing and waning. Right now, she's menopausal and she has a bunch of kids. She's got a granddaughter and a grandson. And for her, it's harder because hormones are wacky. Another mom says, it's harder for those of us with organizational challenges for sure. Try as I might to plan ahead for a week. I fly by the seat of my pants. I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of mom. So why is homeschooling easier for some and harder for others? Well, some of us have no ability to keep our houses clean and organized. And while that's not a benchmark or a standard for homeschooling, if we're buried in laundry and dirt and grime and clutter, and we throw educational things on top of it, like cardstock paper, construction paper, glitter, and glue, then it can be a true disaster area. But it still doesn't mean that you're not rocking it in homeschool. So let's see. So why is homeschool easier for others than it is for some? I think some of it involves, one mom says, I think some of it involves the personalities of the mom and her children. Other things may include family situations, job situations, financial health, special needs. Everyone's coming from a different place. And I don't mean the cost of homeschooling in financial. She says a lot, but she says the other thing, and one that's very important, is education. Did you research? Are you driven by what others is saying is the best, or did you buy curriculum and materials too soon? She goes on to say. That's a really good point, because homeschooling can be hard because we can listen to the crowd and follow the pack, buy the sparkly curriculum, and then realize it doesn't work for my family. And I just spent $342.93 and it doesn't work and I can't return it. So sometimes it's just that you listened to other people rather than your own gut, even well-intentioned people. So why is homeschooling easier for some and harder for others? Maybe we walked into it with rose-colored glasses and we didn't create a goal, homeschool goals of what it is we want for our kids by the time they graduate high school. Maybe we have, like I had a fantasy idea of me standing at a whiteboard and teaching, and my children all sitting there like little angels, and we would do homeschool for a few hours and then we'd go skipping through the tulips. Yeah, it didn't work like that at all. But I was really thankful for the community of moms around me that helped me see that focusing on heart and character and attitude while the kids were little was more important than teaching them to read and write and to do their facts and figures, because you can teach older children in a day, if they have the right attitude, almost any basic concept, versus if you have younger children and they're all over the place and they don't listen and they're disrespectful and you don't have the household side in place, then it's impossible to teach them anything because they're not listening, they're not attentive, they're not teachable. So why is it easier for some than others? Some invested all of that early childhood in child training and manners and etiquette and proper behavior. You know, these are the types of things. It's the difference between thinking about someone that has a well-trained dog. I don't. My dog's a spaz, okay? But I know that people that have well-trained dogs that'll sit at their feet and that they'll fetch and they'll come, they'll even run down and pick up something and deliver it and put it away. I saw one that had this dog that came and opened the door, picked up the bags, put stuff away, and went back and shut the door. Well, that pet owner, this is very relevant to being a parent, that pet owner took the time to really work with and train that dog. And no, our kids are not dogs. And no, we don't train our kids the same way that we would an animal. However, the principles of training are the same. We have an expectation. We model it, we practice it until it is mastered, and then it's expected. And when the child doesn't rise to that level, because there will be days that they don't, we have a plan in place of how do we back up and how do we do it again. And so much of the early struggles in homeschooling, when you're trying to teach the academics, comes from not having the discipline and the training under control or the routine in the household so that there's space for things like academics. Academics is just this little teeny tiny piece of homeschooling. Okay, so why is homeschooling easier for some and harder for others? Let's see, let me grab one more. Some stress about it too much, or they compare themselves to what others are doing. Oh, that's a really good one to close on. Some people struggle with homeschool because they think that what happens in their house has to look like what happens in mine or what happens in yours, and it doesn't. And you have to remember that what I share on social media most of the time are the highlight reels of my life. You know, I'm not sharing the times that when my kid had a temper tantrum and screamed and threw himself in a puddle and screams at the top of his lungs that I'm not his mother. Or the other time that my kids come running through the house and almost kill each other because they ate the blackberries off the bush that they weren't supposed to. It's like, why do you have fights like that? Or they cry over their math or whatever. These are not the things that we share because we like the warm, fuzzy things. And the reality is that homeschool has it all. So I think homeschool is easier for some most of the time because they lay their foundation. They focus on character, they focus on heart, they focus on attitude, they focus on the rhythm of life and the routine of the day. And so there is a dependability, there's a predictability about what's going to happen. The same way that we can have good solid bedtime routines for our toddlers, which helps them wind down and go to sleep. Our days can have a gentle routine to them so that the kids know they get up, they make their bed, they have breakfast, they get dressed, etc. And then you roll into this is the math part of the day, this is the chores part of the day, this is the outside play, right? That natural routine really helps and makes a difference. So homeschooling can be easy for you too on Tuesdays every other month. Or just focus on the fact that homeschooling is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and that the reality is that when you look back, I look back and I consider myself to be non-arrogantly, I consider our homeschool journey to have been a success. Our kids like each other most days of the week. Our kids still love to hang out with us most of the time, even though they're 16 and older. My husband and I are still happily married. We love to learn, we love to read, we love to explore. The kids have grown to be expert help seekers. But when I look back at 25 years of homeschooling, I can see very distinct, specific learning moments that we rocked it, right? Where we took the book and we went on a hike and we read about Native Americans as we ground acorns in actual grinding stones on the mountains. Like the kinds of things that you think of that, oh, I want homeschooling to be like that. Well, there'll be handfuls of those types of experiences. And then they'll be bookended by the humdrum of life. It's just a normal Wednesday. We have laundry to do. The dog ate that plant in the backyard and got sick and disrupted quiet reading time, etc. Real life makes homeschooling kind of messy, but it's a beautiful mess. And don't think for a second that other people have a wonderful day. You've got this, homeschool mama.